The power of story in a purpose-driven business. That's the topic I'm going to explore today in this video. It's a very interesting topic, story, for a variety of reasons which I'm going to dive into, down to the very nature of humans and how we perceive reality, down to the way that Jesus often spoke and taught, down to the way that makes information memorable and you can retain, and how if you understand story, you can understand how to use it to teach and impact far more people. Hi, I'm Sam. I'm the co-founder of Kingdom Impact Lab along with my incredible wife Tatum, and our goal with Kingdom Impact Lab is to empower people around the world and show you how you can pursue Christ-likeness in every area of your life, from business and finances and work to parenting to marriage to relationships to health and fitness to your hobbies to all these different domains. My wife Tatum is focusing at the moment on motherhood and parenting as we try to homeschool our 3-year-old, turns 4 soon, and the journey of the struggles of what it's like as a mother and what she's trying. And what I'm focusing on at the moment is to help Christian entrepreneurs in business, how you can find meaning and purpose in your work, and integrate your faith with your business so you can have kingdom impact through what you do in business, in a way that's not, you're not kind of forcing the Bible down people's throat, but more so how to align your business with biblical principles so that you can find meaning and purpose in everything you do, especially if you've hit financial targets and you are no longer feeling excited by hitting the next revenue goal, which I experienced myself. So that's it. So let's dive into this video here, which is about the power of story in building a purpose-driven business. So first of all, we'll have to look at story, and first of all, let's consider this from a biblical perspective. And if you look through the Bible, through the Gospels, you'll find that Jesus often spoke in parables, and he often taught through story. And if you read the Gospels, a lot of things that we see in the Gospels is a story. It's telling the story of what happened. And so that would be the first thing to mention, is that if the goal is to pursue Christ-likeness in everything that you do, which is the pursuit of excellence, extravagant love in everything you do, humble service to others, integrity in what you do, then it kind of makes sense to look at what Jesus did, and if he taught through stories and parables, well, that's the first thing that we need to consider. And regardless of if you're a Christian or not, and I suspect you probably are if you're watching my videos, but even from the non-Christian perspective, it's inarguable that Jesus probably was the greatest teacher that ever existed. That's something that you can't deny. And so, if you want to learn, you want to be the best at what you do in the pursuit of excellence, well, learn from the best. So that's the first thing. That's why stories are so important. The second thing is, this is something that Jordan Peterson talks about in his book, We Who Wrestle with God. It's a very, very dense book. I've gone through part of it, and I've shelved it for now, because I just don't have the time to kind of study deeply at the moment. But it's explaining the biblical stories, in particular the ones that are in the Old Testament, in the Torah. Genesis plays a big part in there, explaining how these stories map the human condition perfectly. Again, the key word there is story. That's pretty much what we read in the Old Testament too. And so essentially what Jordan Peterson says is the reason why stories are so powerful is because humans perceive reality through story. We perceive the world through a narrative. And story is how we find meaning in all of the facts and information around us. So before we explain this concept in more detail, let's have a look at what happens without story. Without story and without a narrative, we are in chaos. The world is chaos. Because there's an infinite number of facts, and all the facts state something. How do we make sense of facts, plural, in combination with one another? And how do we perceive it? And how do we kind of understand what it means, and how can we act on it in isolation? Well, we can't. And let me just come up with some facts, and you can tell me if you think that it's appropriate. And I've been put on the spot now to come up with some kind of a fact. And let's say that here a fact is that there are 9 planets in the solar system. Whether you want to include Pluto or not, that's kind of irrelevant. There's 9 planets in the solar system, and the planets go around the sun. That's a fact. What do you do with that information? Well, that fact on its own, without context, is meaningless. Now, magnify that up, and then apply that through the lens of a modern world, where we are constantly bombarded with information and facts all the time. I mean, what is it, something like being bombarded with 10,000 marketing messages per day or something ridiculous like that? Don't quote me on it, because I don't know, it's just from something I've heard once. Well, how do we possibly make sense of that? We can't, in isolation. It's just information overload all the time. Now, if I were to provide more context to the fact that I just told you about, there's 9 planets in the solar system and they orbit around the sun. If I were to say that, the reason why I told you that fact is because our son Jamie is interested in space and planets, and what I like to do as a way to kind of play in a fun way while educating him, while teaching him, is that I like to accidentally say the planet Neptune while I'm teaching him something that's completely unrelated to planets. And he asks me to tell him the days of the week, and so I'd go through the days of the week. I'd get him to repeat once, so he's remembering it and asking questions, and then I'd go through the days of the week again and say Monday, Tuesday, Neptune, Thursday, Friday, and then he stops, he looks at me and then catches me out, and then he says, oh, Neptune's not a day of the week, and then he starts laughing and points it out, and then I'm asking him the comprehension questions such as, well, what day did I miss? What should I say instead? What day comes after Wednesday, for example? And that's the way that I teach him. Now that I've provided that context, that story, you can understand the relevance of the fact that I just gave you. You understand a lot of things. You understand the context of planets, that my son is interested in space and planets. Then the question is, why is that? You can ask why, you can elaborate more, you can understand how he went on the journey as someone that's 3 to knowing the planets and being interested in space. You understand from the context of what I've said is that we educate him at home, and that education is an important part for us, because that's what we've been talking about. You can decipher techniques that we are learning, that I'm using to try to teach him things, to make learning fun, to make learning part of everyday activities. You get the point. You can see context, you can see the story. You can start to build a narrative about who I am as a father and what my objectives are with educating my son. You get to understand what my son as a 3-year-old is like as his personality. You get to understand the teaching style that I'm trying to use. You can ask further exploratory questions in order to learn more about what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. The point is, an isolated fact within a narrative which I've just told you gives it meaning. And that's how humans perceive the world. That's why story is so important. So, now we understand why story is so important. Why is it so important for your business? Well, first of all, it's so important for your business because of the way that stories and narratives influence the way that you operate your business without you even realizing it. When you're aware of this, you can proactively fight against it, and pursuing Christ-likeness is how you proactively fight against external narratives that influence your day-to-day decisions without you even realizing it. And then how you can apply this context to have the biggest kingdom impact with your target audience, and how you can use your business to have kingdom impact, and so and to actually help people and to do positive things. So let's look at the first one. Why is story so important for you as a business owner operating a business? So let me explain this with my own story. So my own story is that I was an atheist for most of my life. For almost 35 years I was an atheist, and by definition as an atheist, perhaps you couldn't articulate it at the time, but the reality is that you self-construct meaning in things. You create your own meaning through achieving goals. You create your own purpose in doing things, in the pursuit of things which you arbitrarily, maybe not so arbitrarily, set as a goal. And naturally, as an atheist as well, you are much more subject to your emotional whims. You're much more susceptible to hedonism, which is the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain, which is sort of like what Sigmund Freud spoke a lot and taught a lot about, which I kind of think is wrong, and Jordan Peterson also mentioned that Freud was wrong on that. And obviously you're much more subject to this. And so that's just there to provide the context for the story I'm going to tell you. And so throughout my life I've always enjoyed learning and studying and expanding my own knowledge. But through the worldview that I had, there was no real point to pursuing anything, because, well, there's no intrinsic meaning to arbitrary goals that you set yourself. You find the meaning and purpose in the pursuit of that goal, in the day-to-day actions that you make and the things that you do daily in order to move you step by step closer to the goal that you've set yourself. You achieve the goal, you have the dopamine release, you feel great, yes, I've just finished my first marathon, and then a week later it goes, and 2 weeks later it's gone, kind of thing. And that's just the reality of things. Humans find joy and fulfillment in the day-to-day progression, incremental progression towards a goal. When we achieve the goal, we get lost. So, what's the point of this in the context of this video on why you need to understand the influence of story on the way that you operate your business? For me, it was always the pursuit of excellence because of what I've just described. I always wanted to get better and better at what I did. And as a result, I spent several years, well over 10,000 hours, I thought, because I'm the kind of person that's happy to wake up in the morning and then I'd be happy to study for 2 to 3 hours. My perfect day would be I'd study for 2 or 3 hours in the morning, and then maybe I'd record a video and teach it, and then I'd go for a run while listening to a podcast. I'd come back and then I'd relax while listening to another podcast, and then in the afternoon I'd go and do something else, and I'd be talking about the things I'd learned, and then on the night I'd be listening to something else. That would have a really perfect day for me. Not practical, and it's a selfish thing to do with the family and whatnot, but I'd be happy to do that all the time. As a result, I spent a lot of time learning sales and marketing and funnels and copywriting and all of these things. Studying the best copywriters, studying the best marketers. I spent a lot of time learning, studying, a lot of time and money, invested in training and listening to it and studying it and reflecting on it and talking about it and all these things. And so I built up quite a decent knowledge based on business and marketing, which I then proactively used as a freelancer while delivering a service to clients and while operating my business. What I failed to realise is, and I only realised this afterwards, is that all of the stuff that I am learning in the secular business world is transactional in nature. Everything is focused on making money. The North Star in the company is making money most of the time. Not always, but most of the time. If you're working in a company, like as a sales agent, you're focused on hitting your KPIs and number of calls and conversion rates of calls and number of follow-ups and all of these things. What's the ultimate goal on that? Making money. My brother-in-law, for instance, works at an insurance company, and he was so happy because he hit a monthly target or a quarterly target or whatever it was, and the incentive was they were going to take him on a trip to China for a week or whatever it was, and that was his reward for hitting his targets. Another time he came back with a brand new phone because he won that in a lucky draw of people who hit their targets. Well, what's the number one incentive that's driving them? It's sales, conversions, number of book calls, which is to make the insurance company more money. I don't think my brother-in-law is even aware of what's happening, but within the environment that he's in, and this is not his fault by a long shot, I'm just using this as an analogy to understand what's happening. The narrative and the story within his workplace is completely and utterly dominated by making money, and that is what, and then they hold the carrot out in front of, if you hit your targets, you might get to go on this holiday for free. If you hit your targets, we're going to have this lucky draw, and look at these prizes you can win. That's what incentivizes them. Materialism by achieving financial goals. That is the story within this workplace. So if you're in that situation and you're speaking to someone to sell them insurance, if you find that your prospect that you're talking to is not suitable for the insurance package that you're going to sell, on a subconscious level, you're going to try to justify to yourself why it would be a benefit to them to buy the insurance package, even though it's not right for them, and deep down you know it, because you are motivated by getting that sale and hitting your targets in order to give you a chance of winning the materialist consumerismist, I don't know, but in order of having these sort of prizes that you're going to have afterwards. And so the story and the narrative of the workplace that he's in, and likewise all other people around the world, because this is not just insurance companies, this is the business world. It's all transactional. It's why one of the most popular business books is called Profit First. I've got the book. I've got the audio book, and there's nothing wrong with building your business to make profit, because that's kind of, you need to make your profit because you can't operate otherwise. But there's no world famous books that I'm talking about impact first, profit second, for example. You know, just to say. So everything that I learned and studied is transactional. I didn't realise it. And I work with several coaches. You know, there's three in particular, two in particular where I spent a lot of money on them. One of them was over 6 months, and the other one was over like a 2-month intensive. And well, the way that these coaches worked with me is, what's the target I want to achieve? So I tell them, okay, and then they try to help me hit that target. Well, how do you know if the goal and the target that you want is the right one for you? You don't, kind of thing, because you've just arbitrarily set yourself a goal. There's no deeper meaning behind it. You've just set the goal. Well, I just set the goal. And then the coach comes in to justify their fee and justify what they do in order to help me achieve the goal that I set. What was the goal that I set? Financial targets. The first financial target, which I chased probably for 6-7 years, was a good one, because it enabled me to have some level of financial security. One of the biggest stresses in life is money. Not having enough. Expenses, debt, all of these things. So you need to, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you need to have food and shelter, and not to have to worry about money all the time, in order to think about bigger things and search for meaning and purpose. So hitting the first financial goal for security is a good thing. But then the next financial goal that you want to hit kind of doesn't really lack the meaning. You know, there's no kind of point to it beyond doing it for arbitrary reasons, which is why I struggled. And I'll go into depth about my own story about this a lot of times. So the coaches that I pay a lot of money for are there to help me hit my next financial goal. And the question is, why did I set myself this financial goal? And the reason is because for the previous however many years, I put so much time and effort into learning business marketing and whatnot, and copywriting, which is focused entirely on transactional thinking, a transactional mindset in a secular business world, in a secular marketplace. And so, without me even realising it, everything that I did was based on this transactional thinking. Everything that I did was based on making money. I knew nothing else but that's pretty much everything that I'd learned for such a long time. And it just wasn't fulfilling, just wasn't right. It just resulted in me behaving in what I can now identify as a manipulative way towards the way I treated clients. And the reason is because I would inflate's not the right word, I would selectively choose the highlights of a result that I'd got a client, and then focus on that as the focal point of everything that I've done, and make it seem like this is what I do all the time. In other words, for example, in 1 month I made a client $250,000 in a single month in 30 days. What I didn't tell people was this business, their target for the year was to hit 10 million. So $250,000 in a single month on their target to hit 10 million isn't really that good. You know, when you put it in the context of what I was talking about. I didn't tell them that this particular time I'm selling a $10,000 program to people who are already aware of what the program is, and this is the last time that they're closing the program because they don't want to do it anymore. So you either join now or never. I don't say that. I don't say that the email is about 30,000 people on. I didn't say that well, actually we made that money in a single month, but this was actually the end result of a 3-month campaign where people could only buy in that last month. I don't say that. I just focus on 250,000 in 30 days. So by me saying that, intrinsically it's manipulative, because I'm using that to attract clients to look what I've got, look at all of these things, I'm trying to brag about the results. Again, just to put it bluntly, it was just bragging about the results to try and get clients to come to me. Intrinsically, inherently it was wrong. It was, I'm not giving the full story, therefore I lack the integrity in what I'm doing. The next way that this affected the way that I operate, because of this narrative that I'm part of, this story that I'm part of, as a result of the spirit of the marketplace, the spirit of the transactional business world, is I operated entirely on what I thought to be true, because that's what everyone taught me and that's what everyone else did, and that's what the successful influencers and entrepreneurs in the space that I were following and studying were doing too. What was that? Well, you can tell people that you're going to get them this big return on investment. So I did, and got clients because of it. And so my responsibility was to get a client a certain return on their investment in my services. So that my performance was measured on if I hit that target or not. I once had a client say to me that they currently get a 6x return on investment on Google Ads, so I need to get more than a 6x return on investment on their email marketing. Otherwise, why would they pay me and not just give it to Google? You know, that's the kind of clients I work with, because that was the kind of clients that I attracted, you know, by using this language. So in a situation like that, what do? Well, there's a relatively low month of sales for the client. Not your fault, not the company's fault. External factors play into it all the time. You are not in control of the business. There's so many external factors that happen. You know, if there's some kind of a natural disaster in the world, and it's all over the news and it's a tragedy, you're probably going to get fewer sales. Political events, fewer sales. So many things out of control, and you'll get fewer sales. But yet my worth and the justification of the client working with me is based on this ROI. So what does that lead me to do? That led me to use what I can now say and admit, and it's very painful to admit. I'm not saying this lightly. This is very heavy on my own heart to admit. You know, it forces me to look at the sins I've committed in the past, which is hard. And I use manipulative marketing all the time in order to get people to buy for clients' high ticket offers. If a client had a low month and they needed revenue fast, I'd come up with a brilliant idea on how they can make more sales and more money. Well, kind of a way that I can see it is that, well, the people that wanted to buy your offer would have bought your offer, because we send emails every day, and then at the end of it, an email is book a call if you're interested. People see it, people know, and then we come up with some kind of a payment plan or zero money down if you commit to this, and all of these other things. Well, and then using high pressure sales tactics in addition to that to get people to buy. And I imagine that, especially when you look at the price of the program being $5,000, that a lot of people who couldn't afford it invested in that program with money they didn't have in order for the promise of a future life that they didn't get. And all of this was so a client could hit their arbitrary financial targets and hit their percentage growth targets and all of this stuff. And when you operated like this for 7, 8, 9 years, the damage that you caused, you know, as a result of my email marketing, I've sent millions of emails that I've written have gone out to people, whether they've read or not, another thing, but to millions of emails have gone out, maybe tens of millions of emails. You know, some people have probably been hurt as a direct result of my manipulative marketing, but I didn't find it manipulative at the time because everything was based on transactions. It was the story of the business world, the story of copywriting, the story of everything which influenced me. And that's what I did inadvertently to other people by managing a client's email list in order to focus on getting that client as many sales as possible, to justify the ROI that I promised them. And that's reality. And that's what happened to me. And especially when I was an atheist, and as I mentioned before, that through the worldview of atheism, meaning and purpose is self-constructed. You create meaning and purpose in the goals you set and the things you do. I was justifying it because subjectively to me, it's meaningful to do it for the client because the client wants money. That's my objective. There's nothing beyond it, kind of thing. It's painful to admit. It's things I've done in the past, and well, I've got to deal with it. But it then allows me to see things through a different lens, which is kind of why I set up Kingdom Impact Lab. And so that is probably a long way to say, but I hope the examples that I've given in my own stories can hammer home the point that if you're not careful, the story and the narrative of the transactional secular marketplace, the transactional secular business world is all about money and transactions and KPIs and sales and all of these targets. And if you don't do anything, they will influence you in the way that you operate your business, because you're operating your business, and let's face it, if we're honest, nobody can predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. The future is an unknown, and everything we do, if we're honest with ourselves, is just our best guess. We're kind of trying to figure things out as we go along, which is what makes life fun. It's the problem solving and the things we do on a day-to-day which make it fun. So we don't know what's going to happen in the future, and so we're making our best guesses on what to do in the present moment based on the external influences and what surrounds us. And we are perceiving the world through a narrative, through a story, and we have no control over the story that's constantly pushed into us from sales and marketing campaigns everywhere we look, from the transactional business world that's focused on making money, from various marketing campaigns and advertising campaigns that's promoting pleasure and avoidance of pain and all of these things. And if we're not careful, this story will influence us subconsciously, and that will influence the way that we act and behave. And so you have to be very, very careful of story, because this is how it will have a negative effect on the way that you operate your business. And you too may find yourself inadvertently doing things that misalign with your core values and the way you want your business to operate. And especially if you're a Christian, some of the things that you do in your day-to-day business practices may misalign with who you are as a Christian and what you want to do as a result of the story and the narrative of the marketplace. So that's the power of the story in a negative way. Now, how can we use the power of story in a positive way? And this actually provides a solution to what I've just told you. And that is that you set yourself the goal of pursuing Christ-likeness in everything that you do. For me, pursuing Christ-likeness is you want to pursue excellence. Excellence in your ability, excellence in your character, excellence in your integrity. It's the pursuit of extravagant or radical love, where you are viewing everything that you do as, how can I be a blessing to as many people as possible today with this specific thing that I'm doing right now, whether it's a social media post, an email, a resource I'm creating, a video I'm doing. That's the mindset and attitude to have. It's the pursuit of humble service, where you operate based on radical generosity of, give first, try to help people without expecting anything in return through humble service. Humble service, recognizing that you are not controlled of the outcomes. For Christians, we'd root that in God's in control. God's business, God's finances, you're merely the steward. Which is a fantastic way to do things regardless of if you're religious or not, because it keeps pride at bay. Humility is one of the greatest strengths that you can have. Having humility allows you to constantly grow, constantly become better at what you do, constantly have new perspectives, constantly treat each person as a real human with a unique story, because you interact with people trying to learn from them rather than trying to take from them. And then it's having integrity as well, which means that the decisions that you make align with who you are as a person and your core values, rather than being pressured to do something that you disagree with, or that misaligns with you, whether subconsciously or consciously, whether you do it deliberately or unintentionally. And it's remaining consistent and having integrity even when it goes against your self-interest. That's what the pursuit of Christ-likeness is. And the reason why you do this is, without me, I could speak for hours and hours and hours on this, but I won't. And I want to do it in the context of this video, and that would be the reason is because I once heard a pastor, a guest pastor from Nigeria, of all places, and she said that people don't read the Bible, they read Jesus through you, which directly aligns with a book that I believe provides the mechanism for the way that I want to operate my life and business, which is Invasive Kingdom by Pastor Dr. Philip Lim. And the whole concept is that you operate in a way that's Christ-like in what you do, in your day-to-day decisions, in the workplace and in the business, and people will start to notice that there's something different about you and different about the way that you do things, and you develop this attractive persona, the attractive personality, and you basically become a magnet in people and drawn towards you, which then gives you the opportunity to share the gospel with them if that's what you want to do. That's what the core concept of what the pastor, the Nigerian pastor, and in Invasive Kingdom says. But whether you do that is your decision and not me. But if you pursue Christ-likeness, people will naturally be drawn to you. And when people are naturally drawn to you, this is where you can impact them the most. And the way that you would impact them is you would use everything that you do in your business in order to craft the story and to tell the narrative that aligns with Christian and biblical principles. And the reason why you would do that is because by anchoring your identity in God and anchoring your identity in Christ, what that means in practical terms is you are anchoring in the eternal, infinite, and perfect, which essentially is something that is timeless. It's not going to shift or change. It's something that you can rely on to be that solid foundation that you can anchor your life and business to. And that's how you can then have meaningful progress in what you do and the way that you can influence other people as well. Because you need to have that solid foundation. Because if you don't, you're just moving from side to side. And you can then use your own story, use whatever it is that you want, and that allows you then to impact as many people as possible. So that is why story is so powerful in building a purpose-driven building, a purpose-driven business. So just to recap, we perceive the world through story. We make sense of the world and facts in the world through story and narrative. If we are not careful, the secular, transactional business world and marketplace will subconsciously influence you. It will subconsciously impose a narrative on you because this is the way that everyone does it, and this is the way that everyone is doing business, which you will follow what other people do naturally. That story and that narrative can negatively influence you, and then over a longer period of time, that's the misalignment between who you are and what you're doing will grow larger, because being a transformative person at heart, operating in a world that idolizes and focuses on money at all costs is like a contradiction. They don't fit together. And then the longer you do it, the more misaligned. So you have to be aware of this so you don't fall victim to it. And then you can then use the power of story to become attractive and magnetic to the people that you interact with, whether it's your team members, your social media followers, your email subscribers, anyone that interacts with you or your business in a meaningful way, clients. You can become the light by acting in a Christ-like way in your day-to-day decisions, and then using your own story to positively impact others. Okay, that's all. See you next time.